Power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. I'd like to start the very first class of class 12th with this quote because this is relatable to the text, the last lesson, which is the very first lesson of class 12th from the first book, which is Flamingo. And the text is written by Alphonse Daudet. It's so ironic that the first lesson of the class is the last lesson, but the story is very heart wrenching and evokes our conscience to check our deeds, whether the task that we are doing right now is to be continued or we need to refine our deeds. So to start the chapter, we need to understand the introduction. And introduction won't be clear unless and until we go into history. History's particular chapter, that is Franco-Prussian War. In this war, Alsace and Lorraine, these two very prominent provinces of France, which were very much rich in iron ore and iron industries, were taken by German or Prussian troops. After the acquisition of these two provinces, that is Alsace and Lorraine, to German authority, how the life of Alsatians changed, we will see in this story. But before that, let me discuss few points which are left from introduction. Our second point of introduction is absolute power corrupts absolutely. If somebody is given whole power or 100% power, it's not necessary that they are going to use it judiciously. That particular person is going to be a dictator, is going to be authoritative, and out of his whims and fancies he is going to implement the rules and regulations, and that is where the problem lies. Third point states linguistic chauvinism or language chauvinism. Chauvinism means to take excessive pride in something, and here it is linguistic chauvinism, so it means taking excessive pride in one's own language. Okay, if they are not tolerable to others language, if they prioritize their own language, that is chauvinistic attitude. Fourth point states if a country is invaded by outside force, at that point of time they lose their freedom, and that is very obvious. And another very important point is that they lose their identity. They won't be able to follow the culture, they won't be able to follow the rituals, they will be totally under another power. Whatever they will order, the person, the suppressed person has to obey. Let's move to the next point now, and it is theme. The main theme of the story is procrastination. See, this is human nature to procrastinate things for tomorrow. And we know tomorrow never dies. We keep on piling up our work for tomorrow and we never complete that. And we don't know when our doomsday going to arrive. On that day, we are not going to get any time for completing our task. Therefore, whatever plans we have made, we should accomplish it today itself. The next point from the theme is brutality of war. See, the person who is victorious in the war, they are going to become very insensitive. They will act in such a manner, we will find no trace of humanity in them, because people are displaced, people's properties are destroyed, people are separated from their near and dear ones, beloved ones, and much more. Therefore, it shows brutality of war. Let's come to the protagonist section, and here particularly we find two protagonists. Number one is Hamel, the teacher, and number two, Franz, the student. Hamel is a very strict teacher. He is a hard taskmaster. He is very dominating upon his students, but he is a guide and a philosopher as well, just like an ideal teacher, because Whatever he did to his children, it was to shape students' career only. And very importantly, he was a true patriot. He loved his country from the core of his heart, and he was very dedicated teacher. Franz. Franz was a student of Hamel. He used to avoid his obligations. He was a shicker. He was a truant who used to bunk the classes. He was very careless, but he realizes at last his fault. He becomes very guilty. He understands that what he had lost in these days, and when he realizes, it was too late. Before we go into the line wise explanation, let me tell you, students, the word meaning I have written within bracket in blue ink, so that it will be very easy to understand, so that you don't have to uh, look into the dictionary. And another very important thing is that the phrases or the lines which are in bold letters, in bold form rather, these are very important, and it is asked in the examinations regularly. Therefore, please focus on that. Let me start with the explanation now. I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread of a scolding, especially because M. Hamel had said that he would question us on participles, and I did not know the first word about them. Here, the protagonist is Franz, the student of M. Hamel. He was approaching towards the school, but he did not complete his homework on participle. Therefore, he was extremely fearful to go to school because the teacher was very strict. For a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. It was so warm, so bright, the birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. It was all much more tempting than the rules of participles, but I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. Here, he was tempted by so many things. Nature, he was tempted by Prussian drills, but at that point of time, he did not realize that why these Prussian troops were drilling in their area. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. For the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of commanding officer, and I thought to myself without stopping, what can be the matter now? See, here Franz was stopped by a huge crowd in the town hall, because there only all the news regarding war used to come. In the notice board, every information regarding the war used to be written. Therefore, and all the news that he received was not good at all. Therefore, he was thinking that what could be the next bad news now. But without giving any attention, he started moving towards the school because he was already late. Then, as I hurried as fast as I could go, the blacksmith watcher who was there with his apprentice reading the bulletin called after me, "Don't go so fast, bub. You will get to your school in plenty of time." Watcher made a sarcastic remark because he had already read the bulletin that from the next day there won't be any French classes in Alsace province. Therefore, he said, there is plenty of time. Now there won't be any school, there won't be any classes, so he will have ample of time to go to school. Therefore, it was a sarcastic remark. I thought he was making fun of me and reached M. Hamel's little garden all out of breath. Usually, when school began, there was a great bustle which could be heard out in the street, the opening and closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, very loud with our hands over our ears to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. Here we get to see that little Franz was totally surprised by the condition of the school. It is because generally there used to be huge commotion in the school. Children used to learn their lessons, teachers used to rap their scale on the desk in order to scare children and make them learn, but that very day it was all different. What had happened? Let us read further and we will understand. But now it was all so still. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. But of course, that day everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. On other days, when little Franz used to be late, he used to get into the classroom so stealthily that teacher could not notice. But today it was not so, because there was no noise at all, there was no commotion at all, so that he could enter into the classroom stealthily. Therefore, the teacher M. Hamel noticed him, but he was so polite, he was so kind that day. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places, and M. Hamel walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was. Here, it is understood that Franz did not get chance to get into the classroom stealthily, therefore he had to go from the front of his teacher. But it was so unusual because M. Hamel, who was cranky teacher, who was very rude, had become polite and soft on that very day. So this surprised Franz a lot. He quietly went to his seat and sat there. Let's move towards text now. I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap, all embroidered, and he never wore except on inspection and prize days. Here, when Franz sat calmly. When his fright had gone, when his fear had gone, he was relaxed now, and he looked around and looked at his teacher as well. And then something surprising he got to notice, and that was his dress. He was beautifully dressed on that very day. He was wearing a silk cap. He was wearing embroidered dress which he used to wear on inspection day. It was because it was he had done it for special purpose. What was that? We will learn. Let's continue from the text now. Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn, but the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were always empty the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Old Hosser and his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, the several other besides. Everybody looked sad, and Hosser had brought an old primer thumbed at the edges, and he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. Students, this was another shock that Franz had received that day. That was when he looked at the back, he could see the villagers, the people who were in position, like postmaster and other older villagers. They were there at the back, and not only that, they were having a primary book with them, and which was folded from the corner, which was thumbed from the corner. Now, why they were there at the back on that very day? What had made them come to the classroom? who had not studied till now. We will see. Another very important point out here to be noticed is that see here, former mayor, the former postmaster. The word former says a lot. It means that they are no more in their position. For what reason? We have to read further. Dear students, one thing I want to tell you, the video is becoming very lengthy, therefore I am dividing it into different parts. So the first part I'll complete out here, and I'll send you another video as well. Please wait for that. Thank you. Dear students, yesterday I had uploaded first part of the chapter in the YouTube, and I had sent the same in the WhatsApp group as well. I guess that was very helpful for you all. So today I want to continue with the second part of this story. So let's begin. While I was wondering about it all, Hamel mounted his chair, and in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me, said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is the last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." Students, here we get to see little Franz was wondering why so much of alteration, why so much of changes he is witnessing around him that very day. Why so much of silence? Why there is absolute silence? Why elderly people were there in class? They had already completed their studies. Then why they were there? Suddenly, he heard the polite voice of M. Hamel, who revealed the devastating, the tragic news of discontinuation of French language. He further informed, from the next day, German teachers will be appointed to teach Alsatians. Okay, and that was the news which was put up at the town hall. Generally, on the last day, we don't have energy, we don't have enthusiasm, we just want to relax, isn't it? But this was not the case with M. Hamel. For him, it was a few hours that he had in his hand. It was the opportunity to give, to instill the information into the heads, into the mind of French people. Therefore, he was over enthusiastic on the last day. He was not like usual people, okay, who just ignore their duties on last day. And this is another quality of M. Hamel to which we get attracted. And for your information, I want to tell you that Berlin is the capital of Prussia, from where the notice was generated. And because Alsace was now captivated by Prussia, the order had come from there. What a thunderclap these words were to me. Oh, the wretches! That was what they had put up at the town hall. After getting the information, little boy Franz was very much unpleasant. It was a shocking news for him because this was something he had never expected. He thought that just like usual day he'll go to the school, there will be lots of noise, he will enter, he will sit, he will just waste his time and he'll come back. But that did not happen. After getting the information from M. Hamel, he could understand the reason behind all the odd things that he experienced since morning, right? He was excessively angry now. He called those Germans, those Prussians, as villain. And we all hate villains. We know why, isn't it? Because we hate villains because they don't contribute to human society. They are always negative. They always try to harm them. They always try to do something which will not benefit humanity. My last French lesson? Why? I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn any more.
I must stop there then? Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs, or going sliding on the Sar. My books, that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry. My grammar and my history of the saints was old friends now, that I could not give up.
Students, here we see Franz started repenting. He started making assessment of his learning. What he has learned yet. What he has learned by M. Hamel, who was really dedicated for his students. But he knew nothing. He could assess himself that he knew nothing because every time he played truant, every time he bunked classes to seek birds' eggs, he went to play in the river Sar. This is a river which flows in France, okay, and ends up in Germany. And this was the place where he used to waste his time. But he was very sorry now. Um, he was very sorry because he did not respect learning. And he also realized a couple of minutes ago entire study materials were useless for him. It had become very heavy. He hated all the books, history, science, grammar, but suddenly all those materials, all those books became very precious for him because he knew that from the very next day it is not going to be with him. Students, one thing I want to add out here, why we are considering Franz wrong? Because we know small children, they want to play, isn't it? They are very much fond of playing, they are very much fond of going outside, and they are full of energy, enthusiasm. They want to exercise, isn't it? They want to exercise the energy that they have. Then why we are considering him wrong when he had gone for seeking bird, when he had gone for playing in the river? Is it wrong? Yes, it is wrong. Why? Because there is a specific time for doing a specific thing. At the time of studying, he had to study. At the time of playing, he had to play. So we are considering him wrong because at right moment he did not act in a right way. In place of studying, he went to play. That is why he is wrong. Otherwise, children should be taken to nature. Children should be given opportunity to see what they like and what they hate, right? So here Franz was wrong.
And M. Hamel, too. The idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was.
Here, after realizing the importance of books, his attention diverted towards the teacher, a teacher who had worked in his school, in his Alsatian school for 40 years. 40 years dedicated service he had done, and suddenly he had to leave. Okay, see, even Franz had realized that how much important was the role of M. Hamel in that school. That is why, even though initially he misunderstood his teacher, now he was able to realize, okay, what he had done for him, what he had done for entire community. Therefore he was very sad. Otherwise, if a person has not changed your life, if a person he has no meaning in your life, you won't feel bad, you won't feel emotional at his leave, isn't it? But here he was attached to his teacher. There was fault in him, okay, but still that very day he was very sad because of the dedication that M. Hamel bore till date.
Poor man. It was in honor of this last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes And now I understood why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. It was because they were sorry, too, that they had not gone to school more. It was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more.
Here, little Franz understood the villagers had occupied the back benches of the class as a mark of respect for the teacher and their mother language. It was their way of compensating the loss that they have made. They were guilty of not attending the school till now, and this was the only opportunity they could avail themselves of. And after that, they knew that they had to be under the rule of German people, and whatever they will dictate, they had to obey that.
While I was thinking of all this, I heard my name being called. It was my turn to recite. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule for the participle all through? Very loud and clear, and without one mistake? But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there, holding on to my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up.
Students, till now you must have noticed that one after the other, Franz was having blows. Okay, he was having shocks because the teacher was changing, the language will be changed, the entire the administrative staffs will change because Germans were to occupy Alsace provinces, Alsace government offices from the next day. Let's see what happens to him now. When the child was engrossed in analyzing all the flaws that he had made, he was called by his teacher to recite the rules of participle. And we know that participle was the homework that he had to complete. He had to learn the rules of participles, which he was not prepared with. Uh, he wanted to recite it flawlessly because he repented. He repented that after that day he will not be able to learn all this thing, and he was very sad that till now he had not given importance to his language at all. Therefore, he wanted to do it flawlessly, but it was not possible because he was unprepared. But still, teacher did not scold him at all like usual day. He was very polite, he was very kind. Instead of becoming angry, he was pitying little Franz because it was his mistake that he was never prepared. And it was not only Franz's mistake, there were other people who were involved in it. Who all were there? Let us see further.
I heard Hamel say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, Bah, I have plenty of time. I will learn it tomorrow. And now, you see where we have come out. Ah, that is the great trouble with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow.
Here, it was understood that Franz will never answer properly. Franz won't be able to, tell fluently the rules of participles. But still, M. Hamel asked because it was his duty. It was his duty to look after each and every child, and that is what he was doing properly, right? Now, just like other days, he was not able to answer because he had come unprepared. Now, what he had done? Did he scold him? No, he did not. But he was very sad. He was immensely pained to see the countrymen not learning, not giving due respect to their language, not giving due respect to their studies. Now it was last time and they did not know their mother tongue even. Now, what teacher did? He made Franz realize his mistakes. What he says, let us find out. He said, the teacher said that every day, and everyone of that particular area, that is Alsace province, procrastinated their work for tomorrow. But now it was last day, it was, final day. The opportunity to learn had slipped out of their hand because they had lost all power, they had lost their sovereignty. Now he puts out entire he points out entire population of Alsace for postponing their work. He further said that they will be criticized now by those villains, those Prussians, because even after being Frenchmen, they did not know how to speak and how to write in their language. Students, here you should understand that you might ask that how M. Hamel and other people were communicating when they did not know their mother tongue. But let me tell you, this is not enough. Understanding a language just for communication is not enough. There are something more to understand. For example, being an Indian, do we know everything about India? How many of us can speak our mother language fluently? Do we know all our literary figures? Do we know entire history of it? Certainly no. That is what M. Hamel wanted French people, his school students to understand. Okay, to learn everything about France. That was his motive, where they lacked. Therefore, it was last day and they were not yet prepared, they were not yet equipped with everything, every knowledge of France, and which pained him a lot. Dear students, the video is becoming very lengthy. Therefore, I'll be completing this chapter in my next video, that is part 3. Please wait for that, and I hope you are getting some helpful tips from here. Let me know if you need any improvement in my videos. Thank you. Hello everyone. I'm back with the third part of the chapter, the last lesson, and this will be the concluding part of the chapter. And till now, what we have learned that there are two main protagonists, M. Hamel and Franz. And M. Hamel was leaving his province, that is Alsace, because the Germans had taken over Alsace province, right? And little Franz, along with the old villagers, were made to realize their follies, their mistakes that they have done till now by not giving respect to their language. Now it was their last opportunity, and they wanted to pay homage to not only to the teacher but to their mother tongue as well. Okay, so let's continue what happens further. But before that, I want to explain the last line of the last chapter. The line is, "We have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with." This is very important line, and it says it is not only Franz who is to be blamed. His parents are equally responsible, and M. Hamel as well. How? I'll tell you. First of all, there was nobody at Franz's home to guide him. Parents preferred their children to work rather than going to the school and studying properly. Whenever they wished, they sent their children to the school. And they wanted their children to work in mill, in farm, so that they can get little money. And M. Hamel is to be blamed because sometimes even he had sent his students, Franz and other students, for his personal work, like watering garden, okay, and other things. Therefore, he is to be blamed. But right now, even though M. Hamel had given all these works to children, we are going to consider M. Hamel as a dedicated teacher, because he realized his mistake. He had done his work properly, okay, but sometimes he neglected. And let me tell you, as a human being, we do commit mistakes, right? But whether we realize it or not, that matters a lot. Therefore, the line says, everybody who were involved in this, teacher, students and parents, are to be blamed, are to be reproached for their follies. Let's move to the next para now.
Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills, so as to have a little money, little more money, and I have been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday?
Students, I have already told you that parents are to be blamed, teacher, Hamel as well, and a student of course, right? But here we need to understand that Hamel is to be blamed. It is because the time he thinks students had wasted in watering his garden, that time they should have used for studying. So here, when it was the last day, he realizes that even that few minutes, okay, in which he had sent students for doing his personal work for his convenience, right? He should have avoided that. And here, this is another plus point of Hamel, that he realizes his mistake and he wants to rectify it. But unfortunately, there was no opportunity then after. Let's proceed ahead to the next paragraph.
Then, from one thing to another, Hamel went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it, because when people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison.
This particular paragraph is extremely important. First of all, Hamel, being a Frenchman, he talks high about his language. See, he says that French language is the most clearest and the most beautiful language of the world. Now, do you think it is only French language which is clearest and logical? No, it is not. Because Hamel was French teacher, French citizen, it was clearest, it was beautiful language for him, right? But not for us, because our mother tongue is different. We will say that our mother language, that is, it could be Hindi, Bengali, it could be Nepali, it could be Bhojpuri. These mother tongues are important. These mother tongues are clearest and logical. Hamel further talks about guarding the mother tongue. Now, how to guard it? See, language can be alive till the time people are speaking it, till the time people are communicating in that. If we don't speak Hindi, okay, even after being Indian, then certainly we will forget, right? We will opt some other language. So what will happen? Our mother tongue will die. Our mother tongue Hindi will die. The same thing is going to happen with French people also. And Hamel tries to explain this, that you should keep on speaking, even though Germans are planning to make us forget our identity, but we should be united and we should keep on speaking our language, so that their motive will not work, they will not be successful, their plan will fail to capture the mind of French people. This was a request of Hamel towards countrymen. And another important line out here is, when people are enslaved, when people are oppressed, or they are captured by some other force, okay, what happens then? As long as they hold fast to their language, as long as they cling to their language, they don't give up their language, they keep on talking in their language, what will happen? The language will unite them, okay? The language will unite them, and unity will give them strength, and because of that strength they can free themselves from the prison. That is what M. Hamel wanted to say here.
Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. All he said seemed so easy. I think, too, that I had never listened so carefully, and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give all he knew before going away, and to put it all into our heads at one stroke.
Students, M. Hamel wanted to use this opportunity to the fullest. He didn't want to waste even a second. And be it last day, everybody was so much and so much enthusiastic. Therefore, he wanted to use entire knowledge, okay, for their benefit. Whatever he had gathered till now, whatever he had learned till now, he wanted to pass it on to entire Frenchmen. Okay, so that is what we get to see from this paragraph. Let's continue with the next section.
After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, M. Hamel had new copies for us, written in beautiful, round hand. Franz, Alsace, Franz, Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of our desks. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work, and how quiet it was. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. Once some beetle flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones, who worked right on tracing their fish hooks, as if that was French too.
Here, the scene is so quiet. Everybody was engrossed in completing their work that was given by M. Hamel. Even the littlest ones, like primary students who are very, energetic, who wants to shout, who wants to make noise, okay, who, they don't want to listen to the teacher. But that very day, that last day, even they were able to understand the importance of the time. Okay, therefore, without making any noise, they completed their work, and even teacher was very patient along with his students. So here we get to see that everybody had understood the importance of language, and they were also interested to gather something so that it will benefit them in future. Okay, students, focus in this line which is spoken by Franz, because every time we get to see this particular dialogue of Franz in the examination. And this is: on the roof the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? See students, out here Franz is extremely angry. It is a sarcastic comment towards German people. What he wants to say by this line, let us understand. Here, pigeon signifies nature, and nature cannot be changed. And here, nature of Frenchmen is to speak in French language. The nature of Frenchmen is to follow their culture, and it cannot be changed however German people tries. Right? So that is what Franz wants to say. Whatever they will do, whatever means they will use to change French people to German, it is not going to be successful, because nature can never be changed.
Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Fancy. For 40 years, he had been there in the same place, with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him, just like that. Only the desks and benches had been worn smooth. The walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hope vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof.
Here, M. Hamel understood that what was the plan of German people. As we have already discussed, that German people wanted to capture the mind of the Frenchmen. They had already captured the province. They had already captured the physical territory of France. Alright, but they wanted to govern the mind of French people as well. So it was a crafty plan of them. And after knowing this, M. Hamel could understand that this political enslavement is going to ruin the identity of Frenchmen, which made him very sad. Now, he did not have any power to exercise, right? He can just sit and see the things that was happening in front of him. Therefore, it shows helplessness of M. Hamel when he gazes from one place to another, one thing to another, right? And looking at him, Franz could understand that for 40 years he had been there. For 40 years, service he had given to the school. But at last moment, he realized his importance. Till date, he was cranky, he was rude to him. But last day, he understood the real worth of M. Hamel, which made him sad too.
How it must have broken his heart to leave it all. Poor man. To hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, for they must leave the country next day.
Mr. Hamel was displaced from Alsace to some other province of France, and it was his decision to go away. And not willingly though, he had to leave because we know that German teachers had to replace French teachers the very next day onwards.
But he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history. And then the babies chanted their ba be bi bo boo. Down there at the back of the room, old Hosher had put on his spectacles and holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. You could see that. He too was crying. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. Ah, how well I remembered it, that last lesson.
Everybody was engaged in their learning. Franz had lesson on writing, history, etc. And the small children, they learnt their phonetics, okay, sound words, ba, be, bi, bo, boo. Okay, in English also we have phonetics, in Hindi also, in Sanskrit as well. Okay, the same thing even children studied at that day. And old people, aged people who were there in the classroom, okay, they also gave equal importance to that learning, okay, mere learning, because that was not mere on that very day. It is because after that they won't be able to see their French books. Okay, therefore importance hiked on that last day of French language and French studies. And here we find old people who were studying along with small kids, and they were having their books in their hand, the primer, the primary book, elementary book, okay, and they were crying as well. They were crying because I have already told you they were too much emotional, okay, because of their language. Now at last moment they learnt the worth of learning a language because of M. Hamel. They were able to understand. And now it was a funny scene for Franz because being very old, he was crying, alright, but he did not he could not laugh also, because the reason is vivid in front of him. Therefore he became very sad. And not only that, on that very day, whatever Hamel taught to him, everything was clear, and everything was candid clear to him, and it shows that he was capable of doing studies in a proper way. But because of negligence of parents, because of negligence of he himself, he had become a truant child.
All at once, the church clock struck 12. Then the Angelus. At the same moment, the trumpets of the Prussians returning from drill sounded under our windows. Hamel stood up, very pale, in his chair. I never saw him look so tall.
Now the Angelus rung, and it showed they had to wind up the class. Hamel was so sad, he was so lethargic now. He could not, speak a word. And looking at the condition of Hamel, Franz was able to understand that he was too much attached to his country, okay, and he was a dedicated teacher as well, and this made Franz respect Hamel more. Till now, he respected his teacher, that's true, but on the very last day, it manifolded. The respect was manifolded, it was multiplied. Let's read the last paragraph now.
My friends, said he, I. But something choked him. He could not go on. Then he returned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and bearing on with all his might, he wrote as large as he could. Vive la France. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word, he made a gesture to us with his hand. School is dismissed. You may go.
Right from the beginning, we have seen Hamel too much attached to his country, his countrymen, and language, right? Mother language. So here, when it was last day, he became extremely emotional. It was not in his hand to throw Prussians away, but it was in his hand to praise France, okay, to write something about France. With all his might, he wrote, "Long live France, vive la France." Okay, so it shows that he was a true patriot. He not only loved his country, his language, his countrymen, but when it was time, when it was tragic time, okay, that time also he showed his patriotism towards France by writing about his country with full might. At last, he could not speak a word, and by gesture, he said, "The class is dismissed and they may go home." But at last moment, we get to see it was a very emotional moment, and none of the country should be forced to follow somebody else's culture, somebody else's language. Okay, they should not be chauvinistic people. Chauvinism means to take excessive pride in one's own language. Okay, so here what had happened, Germans had taken excessive pride in their language. They said their language is best. Therefore, they wanted to implement the same in French province, right? And it was not only that, another reason was to govern their mind, to trap them, through their mind as well. Therefore, at last we get to see that Germans were chauvinistic people and not French people, because French people, they loved their language, but they did not go to implement their language to somebody else, but Germans did. By this we end the last lesson, and I hope you all had a nice time watching this video. And if you have any problem, you can drop me a message in WhatsApp number or in the comment section. I will be happy to help you out. And if you want me to improve anything, you can feel free to drop a
message. Thank you.